So excited to be with all of you and to be streaming into YouTube. I think I finally figured this whole thing out. So welcome to Your Message Matters. And today,
So excited
oh
to
goodness,
be with
I
all
always
of you
need to
and
figure
to
out.
be streaming into
So
YouTube.
sorry.
I think
Well, maybe I don't have it figured out just yet. About the time I think I got it all down, all of a sudden something else happened. So we are streaming into YouTube, and thank you for being here today on Your Message Matters. I am so excited about today's show because I've never talked about this before, and it's new to me. So it's not that it's new to me, but it's new to me. Have you ever heard of something but not really had experience? Well, today that's what we're going to be exploring, and that is the world of aggregators. Have you ever heard of an aggregator? A book aggregator? Well, I've said a few times now, not purposely, but maybe it was a Freudian slip, I've called them aggravators. That's not exactly it. It is an aggregator, not an aggravator, although I can tell you my recent experience has been somewhat frustrating for both the author, myself, and I am sure the company. Now, I'm not going to be calling any companies out or anything like that, but it caused me to realize that there are so many ways to get your book done, to get it into the world, to navigate this entire industry. And there are some things that you should know that I have recently discovered that I want to pass along to you. So, how did this all come about, and what are we going to talk about here today? So recently, I was contacted by one of the many authors that reach out to me from time to time, and she wanted me to create a bestseller campaign for her. And I do this a lot. This isn't my first rodeo with this kind of thing. However, it is my first rodeo with a third party, so that's adding an extra layer to the process. So normally people that work with me, we work directly together in KDP, or the backside of Amazon, Kindle Direct Publishing. Having something between those two things, it can be a good thing for the author. I get that, because not everyone knows everything and can get everything lined up to create the right book, the right marketing, the right publishing, the right outlets, the right everything. And here's what I've learned, if I've learned anything at this point, is there are many ways to conquer this process, and you really need to know more and more and more and more. You have to ask questions. You cannot assume anything. So we're going to talk today about book aggregators. But just to let you know, the bestseller campaign was successful in spite of having layers that complicated the whole thing. We had to do it a little different, and I'll explain what we did later on in the show. So I guess the first thing to really talk about is, what is this thing, an aggregate, a book aggregate entity that you might use in this process? So I really, really love setting up best-selling campaigns. Ideally, I talk to my clients on the front end, sometimes even before their book is written. I really want to know exactly what they're going to use the book for. What are their hopes and dreams? What can I do to help those happen for that client? But it can be very, very frustrating to come in at the 11th hour and try to figure it all out. Gratefully, I've learned a few things over this past few years of being in this business. And I think you can always look at something in a positive light and in a negative light. In some ways, the process was very frustrating because what was normal for me was not normal in this process. So what is a book aggregator? These are entities that you very likely have heard of, and they can wear many hats. So here are some of the ones that you might have heard of in the past. You may have heard about draft to digital. That is one popular entity. You might have heard of Ingram Sparks. You might have heard of BookBaby or Lulu or Publish Drive. There's many, many, many of these entities who fit into the category of a book aggregator. It simply means that they provide a wide range of services that cater to different needs. So what does that tell you? You have to know what you need. That's the hard part, because so often we don't even know what questions to ask in this business. It is so broad, and there's so many ways to look at the process. I really want you to know by the end of this show kind of a broader idea of what to ask. Maybe not specific questions. I don't have a list for you, although I can create one. If you might be interested in that, you just let me know, because I know many of the questions that I am asked. And now that I know this process even better, I know what questions to ask to help a person really know the right path for them. So these kinds of services, they cross a multitude of needs, if you will. They can help you on the front end with your book idea. They can help you with the manuscript. They can help you with editing, formatting, marketing, publishing, deciding how to approach the best process for you. And I have come to know that authors need to choose who they work with based on their exact needs. And sometimes you need to talk to somebody like me that can help you figure it all out. Because the first thing I really need to know, and so do you, is who do you want to read your book? Who are you wanting to impact? What does that person look like to you? You can market a book up one side and down the other. But if you don't know who you're marketing to, your marketing efforts may be very inefficient. Let me just say that. We've talked on this show about keywords. We've talked about categories. We've talked about changes. As we know, at one time we could pick 9 categories altogether, and now we have 3. You cannot go back and ask like we once could to get some added. So those 3 categories are going to be very, very important. And just as a little tip, because I love you guys so much, the way I do that is I pick one very broad category, because very often, if you can get your book to rise to the top and you are next to an author that is a well-known author, that is excellent marketing material. I had one of the authors that I worked with, she was a little disappointed that she didn't get into the number 1 slot. She was number 2. But Max Lucado, who in her genre is a very well-known author, was number 1. I don't know about you, but I would take a number 2 next to somebody like that who is so well-known in that genre. So it's exciting to really think about all of the different ways to market. But then besides a broad category, I like to pick 2 that are much more niched down, because when you niche your book down into the right category, it does 2 things. The first thing it does is it is going to go to the people that are searching that kind of book. You want them to find your book when they are searching certain keywords, right? And looking under certain genres of books. You want them to find that. It's really important. And you do have a better opportunity because there's fewer books in that particular category, you have an easier time working your book up into those high categories, creating a bestseller book on Amazon. So I guess the biggest question that I get is how to be in favor of the algorithms, especially when we consider a third party between you, your book, and how you can market that book, how you get it seen, what you can do, and all of the control. So just to let you know what we did with this particular book, thank heavens it all worked out. So the day of the book launch, this third party was not fast acting. And that is one of the downsides that I have seen when working for or working with book aggregates, like I've mentioned the names before. There are many, many of them, but they don't react quickly most of the time. It's not like they just click a button like you can when you're dealing directly with KDP. You go in and click a button, and yes, sometimes your change does take a few hours, even up to 72 hours for changes, but at least that is predictable. It's a lot more predictable than have somebody tell you, well, we don't know when it'll actually happen. It could be a day, it could be 2 weeks, it could be a month. And you're thinking, how is that even possible? Well, there's a purpose for everything. And I do get that there are some things you don't want to be playing around with. But what we ended up doing in this instance is we did run a 99-cent promotion, which helped this book really rise to the top and get on the bestseller list. So don't forget to use your promotions if you can. But that would be a big question I would ask if I'm working with an aggregator, because you want to know, are there promotions that we can run on Amazon? And what is the plan for my book promotion if you are going to handle that part for me? Is there going to be extra costs? If I want to change the price of my book, or if I want to run a particular Amazon promotion, is there going to be a cost associated with that if you do that for me? And do I have control over my Amazon account? In the situation with this particular author, she did not have access to her Amazon account. Well, should I say the book was not under her account, it was under the aggregates account. So she had no way to go to Amazon to click buttons to figure out what she could do to promote her book on her own. She now has to go through them because they are the ones who maintain control over all of those things. So that would be a big question I would ask if I was thinking about working with an aggregate person or an aggregate entity who has control over my book. And as we know, there are more ways to create a book, period. And it really has to do a lot with what your skill sets are, how much time you want to spend learning things, or if you have the money to pay somebody to do these things for you. Are you going to be happy if you lose control over these kinds of things to create the different types of campaigns that you might want to create for your book? So you can do the whole thing DIY, do it yourself. I was showing one of my other clients over the weekend a book that was given to me recently. And I got to looking at it because we were talking about the cover. And as we know, covers are really important. So if you're talking about working with an aggregate type entity, like one of the ones I mentioned before, you want to know, are you going to be doing your own cover? Are you doing your own manuscript? Are you formatting it for them? Do they have specific needs as far as what you have to do to make it ready for them, or do they do it all? If you give them the manuscript, are they going to edit it for you? Are they going to format it? Are they going to have it print ready when the time comes? Those are the kinds of things you need to know, and you need to fully understand if they have multiple packages. You have to fully understand what those packages entail, and also do your research. If you're doing if you are working with that third party, you really need to do even more research than what you might need to do if you were doing it yourself. So you can do it yourself, of course. You can do it with somebody. That's what I do most of the time, is I work with authors. I help you walk through each step of the decision-making process. And that way you learn too, but you're learning with a guide. And we talk and make decisions about each and every step. So in this particular instance, I was talking to the author about the cover, because she has somebody else designing her book cover. Well, that can be kind of tricky depending on where it's being designed, depending on what kind of book it is. We have to know the page count because the template has to fit. Because when you're doing a paperback book, of course, you have a cover, you have a back, and you have the spine. So in this example book that I was showing them, just so happens that the spine was off, so that the writing was off. It wasn't centered on the spine. The cover, the front cover kind of wrapped into the spine, and then it was shifted over a little too far so that the spine was actually part of the back of the book. I'm really not exactly sure how it was approved on Amazon, or if maybe they didn't click that little button to review it. I don't even think you can bypass that. Maybe they didn't know what they were looking at, because with what they call the bleed, you can see pretty easily, especially if you're using a big screen like I do. I have to have a really big screen to see these things sometimes. If you were doing it on the laptop, I could see how you might need to make some adjustments. But it was definitely a book that whoever did the upload for it on Amazon didn't quite get it right. And it was a publisher, it was not a self-published book per se. They were working with another entity. So doing it with somebody, having a guide to help you each step of the way, is a smart way to do it. But what if you hired an entity like one of the ones I mentioned before to do the whole thing for you? There are companies that will do the whole enchilada, and it isn't that cut and dried, because there's different degrees of help all along the way. So for me, working with an aggregator, it has a lot to do with your control over the product and the promotions. In fact, it's control all along the way. Their reaction time is not quick. So if you want a change, it may take weeks or months in some cases. So if you need a quick reaction time and you're one of those people that like, hey, I want to make it happen, and I want to make it happen now, this may not be your best option unless you maintain control over your own Amazon account. The other thing that was very frustrating in the process of working with a third party was not getting consistent information. So I made several calls just as a normal consumer to ask questions about their process. I called multiple times asking the same questions. And what's crazy is I got different answers each time. And so you kind of go, well, what do they really do? And how do they really do it? And why is it that they can't tell me exactly what their process is and what they are going to do for me? In addition to making my own calls just to get information, I also got on the call with the client. So as you know, you don't always know which questions to ask. So in my process of asking questions, one of the things I asked was about reporting. So if you have worked on KDP at all, or even if you haven't, it's important for you to know that there is a tab on Amazon on the KDP side that gives you your reports. The reports can tell you how many books have sold, which dates, and you can use different filters to get how many books have I sold today versus how many I've sold in the last 30 days. You can take a look and see how many people have purchased your ebook and how many pages that they have read. It's a pretty robust reporting system. But if you have that third party in there, it's kind of interesting. We were told that we will not get any reports for up to 90 days. Well, there's an upside to that and a downside to that. So if you've done your due diligence ahead of time, you've researched properly, you know which categories your book is in and which ones are going to work well for you, the categories and your keywords. If you've done all the background research and you're positive you're in the right place, honestly, you shouldn't probably change anything for 90 days. But in the case of this author, she had her book set up as a pre-sale for a few months, I believe, ahead of her actual launch date. So when you set up a pre-sale through an aggregate anyway, you don't have, at least with this one that she was working with, you have no idea how many books have actually sold. So they cannot tell you or do not tell you how many books you've sold, so that when the day comes that they are fulfilled, that fulfillment day, so you have a target launch day, you would think that if I'm telling everybody that my book is on pre-sale and you will actually get your book on a certain day, you would think that you could pretty much count on that day. But that's not what happened. What happened was when we called, we wanted to know, well, what happens on fulfillment day? When all of these people who have said they've bought the book, they're waiting for the book, when will they get the book in their hand? Well, they couldn't tell us. They said, well, we really don't have control over when this happens. They didn't really know. And the thing of it is, isn't that something you would want to know? So in this situation, the book day came, fulfillment day came, and the idea behind fulfillment is that the readers who've purchased the book as a pre-sale, they should have the book in their hand, for the most part, by fulfillment day. Well, in order for that to happen, the book needs to be shipped ahead of time, right? We're talking a paperback book here. Now, if they have purchased the Kindle version, of course, they would get access on that day. At least that's what you might think. But that isn't exactly how it all works out. So some of the people did get the book ahead of time. Some of them got it after the fulfillment date, and some of the people got it on the fulfillment date. So it's really hard to gauge how that is going to affect your best-selling category. So it's hard to get information, accurate, up-to-date information. So those are the kinds of things you have to work with. If you want to have a best-selling launch, you need to know approximately how many books you need to sell in particular categories, and do you have supporters that will purchase your book ahead of time so that it does rise to the top on the bestseller list. So all of these kinds of things really make a difference if it's good for you to work with another entity. So I'm working with a particular author right now who wants nothing to do with any of that. He really just wants to write books, period. Now, he has one book out already and he is interested in how is it doing. But as far as the nuts and bolts of creating campaigns for it or things like that. He doesn't want to spend a lot of time doing that. So some of the things we may do with his book is run ads. We want to make sure that his listing is A1 or A plus. I don't know where I always come with the A1. Isn't that a sauce you put on your steak? I think it is. But we want to make sure that we are doing everything to market his book and make it visible and available every way we possibly can. So in order for you to choose the right entity you want to work with, it might be important to have a conversation with me, and I would love that. So reach out to me if you'd like on the Facebook group, Write Your Book Now, Authors Helping Authors. I usually post something about the show, and you can reach out to me and ask questions on that format. Look for responses from other authors. When I first set it up, that was the vision, was that people would post questions or tell us about their book launches, just interact with a community of other authors. So it's important, I think, to connect with other authors, and it's important to be able to have somebody to ask questions. So put your questions in there if you'd like. And if you'd like to set up an appointment with me, I would be more than happy to talk to you about your specific needs. I think in order for you to do the right homework going into a call like that, you should assess your own skill set and what are the things that you want to be a part of? For example, I think most authors want to give their stamp of approval on their book cover. I think a lot of times people have in their mind's eye what it looks like, and we need to get it out of your mind's eye and onto the cover of your book. So that may be something that you really want to have conversations with somebody about what you have in mind. In the interior, if you've always dreamt of your interior looking a certain way, these are the kinds of things that you want to ask. One of my biggest disappointments when I did my first book was I envisioned before each section of topics or each topic, because my first book was written with an acrostic of butterfly. And so each of the letters meant a particular topic. So the B was all about belief. And so there's 3 chapters under the heading of B for belief. So I was hoping that I could have butterflies painted by a watercolor group, that each one of these topics, the BUTTERFLY, each one would have its own butterfly painting. But when I worked with my publisher, she said, "Oh, no, we're not doing that." I was really disappointed. It should have been something that I asked up front, but I didn't know what I didn't know. So make a list. If you can design your own cover and you know it's going to be really good because you have graphic arts design, then put that on your list of things that you want to do. If you know how to format a book or you want to learn how, it's kind of fun. Put that on your skill set list of things that you want to learn how to do or things that you already know how. So make a list of the things that you want to do, that you can do, or that you want to hire somebody to do. All of these are so important whenever you consider working with anybody to get your book done. I can't wait to see what books you're creating, so make sure you tag me when you do anything about your book. Because you know what? I know your message matters. If you have a story and if you can help somebody and you can make an impact, isn't that what it's all about? I know we want to make income too, but for me, I love making a big splash. I like being able to help people. I love it when people say, "I got your book and it made a big difference to me." And I know you're going to love this journey. But I also know you're going to pull your hair out from time to time too, because it can be very frustrating. So reach out to me. I would love to help you with your book journey, even if it's just to answer a question or two.